All right, this is episode of Goose Trades podcast with a very good friend of mine, Caroline. Uh,
Hello.
we met probably close in probably nearly 2 years now, probably a bit over a year and a
Yeah, I think
half.
so. Hmm.
Um, we met in Morocco when we're on tour. Uh, yeah, so just tell everyone about yourself, Caroline.
Hi, so my name is Caroline. I am, good God. It's funny, I was about to go, I'm a speech language pathologist because that's how I define myself. So I work with kids. I love traveling, which is how we met. I took a year off and just went and traveled the world for a year. I've been to Australia 5 times now, I think, as starting from 18 onward. My dad is an Australian citizen, which is why I think you thought, oh, this would be a good fit.
Yeah.
We're talking about politics. I do not teach civics or any kind of political class, but I'll give you my input, and I apologize to anyone that I piss off.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I'll put a disclaimer to start. Anything discussed in this podcast are the opinions of myself and Caroline. Uh, so yeah, well, pretty much the what we're going to talk about is obviously the U.S. election is that tomorrow for you guys?
It
Yeah.
is tomorrow, so a lot of people have already voted.
Yeah.
In the state of Texas, more people have voted in the pre-voting stuff than voted in total last year.
Yeah. Wow. So
So
is I was reading an article. I don't know how true it was, but that they predict that this is going to be the one of the most voted on elections in a very long time. Would that be
definitely,
correct? Yeah.
yeah, it already is really. I think
Yeah. Wow.
California, we've at least passed the half point mark on the number of people who voted last year. I think we're at the three-fourths. Oh, I'm also from California. Uh,
Yeah.
so we're at, I think, three-fourths of the people who voted in total last year voted. But it's different than in Australia because Australia, one, it's a national holiday, and two, you guys are mandated to vote. If you don't vote, you get fined.
Yeah.
In the US, about 50% of the people who are eligible to vote actually vote
Wow.
in any election because we have every 4 years for president and then 2 years for Senate or like Congress, House of Representatives, Senate.
Yeah. That blew my mind as a kid growing up. That because like you grow up as a kid and you think that like everything that you do is what everyone else in the world does. And when I found
Hmm.
out that Americans don't have to vote, I'm just like, what?
Yeah.
I'm like, we
Yeah.
cop a fine and we get a tick on our or cross on our names if we
Yeah.
don't vote. But a lot of people that don't want to vote, they either cop the fine or they just donkey vote, which they write something stupid or they literally don't even write anything on a bit of paper and just put it in the box. But I think majority of people actually like proper vote and actually vote for someone. But
Yeah.
it always blows my mind that yeah, it's not not a thing in America. And it blew my mind as a kid to
Yeah.
learn that. I was like, wow.
Yeah, hold on. I have two things. One, I want to know how much the fine is because my dad thinks that when he left Australia, it was about $50 if you didn't vote.
Yeah. I think it's not a lot. I think it's now I think a bit over 100.
Oh,
Um, I'm trying to think. The few people that I knew a while ago that didn't vote in the previous election before last one, it was about $80, and I think they bumped it up this time around with the last election. But I'm not
that's-
entirely sure because I've always voted. So, and
yeah.
most people in my family have always voted, done the right thing. So,
I bet you Pickle would know. You'd know,
yeah,
you'd know the exact amount. You'd be like, well, I paid this much this time, this much.
I was
For
going to
that.
say, he would either cop the fine, not vote, or he'd donkey vote. He's a prime example of
Yeah,
that.
I love him, but he would. No, so the last election, do you remember where that gorilla? Yeah, it was a gorilla in a U.S. zoo was shot when a kid went into its enclosure.
Was that Harambe? Harambe? What is
Yeah,
that?
it started
Yeah,
with an H, something
yeah,
with an H. So he got a lot of votes last go around.
yeah.
Um, Last go around, my mom actually, because she couldn't bring herself to vote for Hillary or Trump. She just couldn't. My mom's always voted Republican.
Yeah.
She did not this year, but she's always voted Republican, and she just couldn't bring herself to vote for Hillary
Oh
last
wow.
election.
Yeah,
So she did it. She just did not vote at all.
yeah,
But it was interesting because for the past 4 years, she said, I can't complain. I didn't vote. I can't. I have no right to complain. Do I like him? No, but I have no right to complain because I didn't try
Yeah,
to
yeah,
change it.
that's a good look to have anyway. If you don't vote,
Yeah.
then it's yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
But
well, I guess the first question is obviously for most people who wouldn't know this, who are you voting for in this election and why? If you would want to say, you don't have to say that.
Sure, I'll say it. My uncles will disown me, but I am voting for Biden in this election
Yeah,
because honestly, I do not agree with anything that Trump says pretty much. I am an independent, which in the US, our primary parties are Republican and Democrat.
yeah,
I fall under independent because I do believe in the right to have guns, the fact that my body is my body,
yeah,
things like that, which used to be the Republican platform.
yeah,
And now that's not their platform. But as a younger woman, I'm going with the person who's going to let me keep my own reproductive rights,
yeah,
all that. Um, Biden also doesn't make my skin crawl. You can't trust any politician,
yeah,
but I really don't trust Trump. He's also, I feel Biden's better for the environment,
yeah,
which is important to me, and education. Oh, don't get me started on Trump and education.
yeah. And
He's horrible.
I guess too is probably similar in Australia where a lot of people that don't follow politics only think that there's two candidates running, but there's actually more.
Yeah.
They're just never talked about because there's no chance of them winning. Um,
Yeah.
so if you did agree with someone from is it the Green and Liberal Party? Are they the other two parties running?
So it's interesting because our Democrats are our liberals, and it's the opposite for you guys.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh, and our Republicans are conservative. But yeah, so we have the Green Party, and then you have people running just as a straight independent, like Kanye West. VP. When I sent you that, I was like, he's not even running for president. He's running for VP with some other guy. People will vote for them. And the sad thing is, when it comes to the presidential race, it's much more like you're throwing away your ticket. You know,
Yeah.
like what you're saying, you're donkey voting, you're just throwing it away. But I have friends who are very passionate about the Green Party and things like that. So last go around, they did vote for, I forgot the person's name, but they voted for that person. And they were actually sad when that person didn't win. But this go around, they are voting for Biden because you pretty much are, it's one or the other.
Yeah.
And we realized last go around how important votes are, but also just to win that electoral college.
Yeah.
Every single one that you can put in is helpful.
Well, I guess it's kind of like a choice too. Like, do you make the moral choice where, for example, if I was a strong Green, I said, nah, I'm voting Green. I don't care if my vote doesn't count.
Yeah.
I want to vote Green because that's what I believe in. I don't want to vote for Biden or Trump because they don't fit into the mold that I want president to be. I know that my vote won't count, blah, blah, blah. And I guess it's the same in Australia as well because we have a lot of state parliament and federal parliament where a lot of local communities, like one person from like you'd heard of Canada's Australian Party, Bob Katter. Yeah. So in North Queensland, like he was the biggest thing. Like he was pretty much their prime minister. They didn't listen to what anyone else said but him. But then you go to Western Australia, they wouldn't even know who Bob Katter is.
Yeah.
So I guess it'd be kind of similar in America as well, where a lot of people are aligned to certain politicians, but in the long run, I guess they got to understand that their vote won't count, obviously, in a presidential election, of course.
So one of the ways that our system works is obviously we vote for the president, and then there's the electoral college that actually elects the president. But for our Senate and House of Representatives, we do have independents, like Bernie Sanders, who's pretty famous now, is an independent from Maine, Vermont. I'm thinking Ben and Jerry's ice cream. But he is an independent, and there are independents in Congress, and there should be, because the problem is now more so than any other point growing up. And I was pretty into politics or followed them like through high school and things like that. I feel like now more than ever, it's either your team Democrat or team Republican. You don't work together, which is a problem, where having those independents is very beneficial because there's the Republicans, which I will admit, some of them in the Senate and the House of Representatives I voted for are just, yep, we're going to do whatever Trump says, even if it's against their own moral standards.
Oh, wow, okay.
With the exception probably of Romney, they'll kiss his butt and do whatever he wants. And then the Democrats, even if they agree with something that Trump's saying, because most of what he's done is bad. Not all of it. Don't ask me what was good because I can't remember. But some of it was not bad. And the Democrats will still attack it because it's the Republican side.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like rival high schools going at each other now instead of people working together. So putting more independence in there is beneficial, which is one of the reasons I also am voting for Biden. Is historically he's very good at working with people from the other party and finding a way to work things out. Like if you look at his relationship with McCain, John McCain, they had a good relationship. They worked together, and that's what we need.
Yeah. So the question I have is, I guess you kind of had to pick two things. Was a lot of people are obviously turned off by Biden's age. Now, for a lot of people that don't know, I think he's currently 77, but is it right he'll be 78 by the time of Inauguration Day? Is that right?
That's what I have heard. I can Google it, but I've heard that.
So that, obviously, I guess you got to pick either, do you want a pig like Trump, or do you want a guy that you're willing to take the risk on that he's going to be able to do his 4 years of his first term? But also in saying that, are you then voting for a president that you kind of know is only going to sit one term?
So Biden, who will be 78 when he is sworn in to office, if he wins, he has stated he will only do one term.
Yeah.
He has stated that, which is good. And I think if he said that he was going to run for another term, people would not vote him into office.
That's right, because you couldn't vote in an 81, 82-year-old.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you could. It depends on the 81, 82-year-old. I personally wouldn't feel comfortable with it.
Yeah.
But if you think back to, when was that? 2008? The 2008 election with McCain. At that point, people weren't voting for McCain because of the age difference.
Because he was he 72? Is that right? McCain, I think McCain was early 70s, I think, at that time.
He was, let's see.
Because I think I did Google it, and Donald Trump does have the record as the oldest president to be voted in, and I'm pretty sure he was either 70, if not pretty close.
He was McCain was 71.
71, yeah. I thought it was early. So that's another crazy stat, though, that if Biden does get voted in, he would absolutely eclipse the record that was held by Trump. I think Ronald Reagan was up there about 68, 69, where he absolutely eclipsed the record by 7, 8 years. But if the person fits the job, then I don't think age obviously comes into it, unless that when Biden was running, he could show signs of not being able to run a country. But that hasn't been the case. But I know a lot of anti-Biden voters have brought that up as pretty much their main thing. That would you vote a 7 or 8-year-old? But then a lot of people say they're voting Bernie Sanders. I'm pretty sure Bernie Sanders is 79 or he's pretty old.
Yeah, Bernie's old too. One of the things, I mean, you're seeing me smile. You know, the one political thing I posted was, this is not political, but Biden is a stutterer. Stop going after his cognitive abilities.
Yeah.
The man is stuttering.
Yeah.
You know, he has a fluency disorder.
Yeah.
So, and this is the speech language pathologist part coming out, is I watched those debates, and I watched Trump in the first debate. What Trump was doing in the first debate compared to how he was with Hillary, it was 100% intentional, and he was trying to cause Biden to have more disfluency.
Yeah.
That's what he was doing, and he was succeeding. But stuttering is a neurological disorder. It has nothing to do with your cognitive ability. And Biden kind of reminds me of me, where he's kind of ADD and will kind of go off and lose his train of thought.
Yeah.
But he cognitively is most likely doing fine. Trump, you know what they gave him when they gave him that assessment
What?
for his cognitive skills? They gave him the MOCA, which I used to work with geriatrics. And the MOCA is a screening, okay? That's all it is for mild cognitive impairment. But there's a picture of an elephant, and what is this? Now, like, it's nothing to the level of what you would need and want your president to have cognitively.
Yeah.
Like, you and I passed the assessment, and I'm sitting there going, that's a screener.
Yeah.
And it is. I'm pretty sure my grandma, who has severe dementia right now, or mild, moderate to severe dementia, could squeak by on the MOCA.
Yeah, well, okay.
But we give it to people who have traumatic brain injuries in the hospital. That's, well, when I've administered. I'm sorry if anyone else administers that any other time, but that's when I've done it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, well, okay.
But also the same, when people voted for Trump, when you're talking about cognitive ability, people who voted for Trump, like family members, some of them absolutely love him. They think he's great still. Other ones did it saying, I don't think he wants to fail. He does not want to be seen as a failure. He's going to hire good people and put them into his cabinet, and they're going to run the show, and Trump's just going to be golfing or in the background.
Yeah.
And really, when it comes to Biden also does not want to fail. He is going to bring in good people, fingers crossed, who will make things go smoothly and who hopefully won't constantly quit and leave the cabinet.
Yeah.
And things like that.
Well, that goes to my next question. Do you think Biden was the absolute best choice to run against Trump? Do you think that he was the only choice to go against Trump, or do you think there was a better candidate or an equal candidate?
I think when it comes down to who was in the final running, yes. Because people don't like Bernie overall, right? People have strong negative feelings towards Bernie Sanders. Those middle voters who, like my mom last time, couldn't bring herself to vote for Hillary, right? Those middle people, they tend to have strong feelings towards Bernie. They have strong feelings towards Elizabeth Warren. Some of those other people were just interesting. But the thing is, Bush, the second Bush, or Obama, traveling while they were president, well, not Bush, but people would talk about Bush. They would say, I don't necessarily agree with their politics, but I at least like them as a person.
Yeah.
And I think that's true about Biden. People like him. Even if you don't agree with his politics, he comes across as a nice guy, a caring guy.
Yeah.
So for that reason, I think it was a good idea. Because Pete Buttigieg, is that his name? He is a great guy and came across as a caring guy, but he didn't have enough experience for people to vote for him.
Yeah.
But Biden can bring people together, which is why I think he was a good idea.
Yeah.
I wish the Republicans picked someone different.
Now, you may have already answered this, but do you know many, if any, Republicans who aren't voting for Trump?
Yeah, so my mom considers herself a Republican.
Yeah.
And she's not voting for Trump. My sister Danielle is previously, I would say, she might disagree with me, was a very strong Republican. I remember when John Kerry was running for, who was he running against? He was running against Bush, right? John Kerry and Bush?
Yes. Yeah, 2004, I think. Yeah.
04, yeah. Danielle had flip-flops with John Kerry's face on them that said flip-flopper because he was known as a flip-flopper.
Ah,
he
right.
Switch back and forth. So she was pretty strong. She loved the cutout of Bush that my mom had, all that stuff. She's voting for Biden. A lot of them are voting for Biden. I have family, though, that is still, they are Trump supporters. Some have issues with what Trump is saying and what he does.
Yeah.
And some do not. But the way my dad explains it, my dad's an independent. Yeah. That's how he's always viewed himself. He's been able to vote the same amount of time I've been able to vote because he became a U.S. citizen right before the 2008 election. He puts it this way. Some people vote with their pocketbook. So they might not agree with anything Trump's saying. They do not agree with any of his politics except for the financial benefits. And they are going to vote for the financial benefits.
Yeah.
And I think that's a lot of the people voting. I like to tell myself that's a lot of the people voting and that they don't actually agree with the bigotry or the xenophobic statements or anything like that.
Yeah.
I try to tell myself that all people voting with their pocketbook.
I guess another thing too is out of all the, I guess, topics and policies that are about, what is a policy that you'd say is the one you strongly want a candidate to focus on, and is Trump or Biden focusing on it at all, or a little bit, or because I know you'd be strong on education policies, of course.
Betsy DeVos drives me insane. That's who Trump put in charge of education, who's never worked in a public school in her entire life. So I used to have a spreadsheet for elections. I did not need it or fill it out this round because, like I said, I am an independent.
Yeah.
So things were weighed differently. It was kind of like a pros and cons kind of list, and whoever came out with the highest total won.
Yeah.
Education was high on my list. Reproduction rights were high.
Yeah.
As a female and someone from California, those were really big. And the other one, oh my gosh, why am I face down? What I care about? Environment is a big one.
Yeah.
Those, I would say, right now, this election, like you said, education, personal rights, and then the environment are probably my big three right now. Because the environment, Trump pulled us out of the Paris Climate Agreement and a bunch of other stuff. We know the environment's going down. The U.S. really, we have coal. Coal is very ancient, and we're not having other things to replace it, which concerns me. I think you have to start. You have to start. We're not going to be there right away, yes, but you have to start. So those are my big ones right now.
Well, I guess all I've been hearing for about probably the last week, of all the policies, the one I've heard about the most has been more so the Trump camp talk about banning fracking and coal mining and all that. Because obviously Biden...
saying that Biden's going to.
Yeah. And that's all I've really heard from Pence and Trump in their rallies and whatnot last week. It's pretty much all you've heard. And it makes me think, just as a Australian that literally doesn't really have a clue about the election at all, is that's all they've really got to work with to go against Biden. Like so they're grasping at straws. So that's just my opinion from watching on the outside.
You watched the last debate too, right?
Yeah.
And so that was the one nugget that they really got from it. And what Biden said was he wants to be able to change fracking, adjust it for now, and then by like, what did he say, 2050?
So it was a fair one.
Something like that, that we would be done with using coal. And fracking needs to be controlled. And fracking, if you look at the research on fracking, if you do it right, people are going to disagree with me. Maybe I've read the bad research. Send me the good research. If you do it right, there is a benefit to it, right? Like it's not 100% bad. And Biden said that. It's not 100% bad. We need to take the good bits and try to get rid of some of the bad bits. It does need to be regulated more so that people are doing it properly and it doesn't cause as many issues for the environment. Things like that. Coal is dying out. There are better, more environmentally friendly ways of doing things. But when you look at the Electoral College, which is how our votes really work. So we vote for a president, but really that just goes to what our Electoral College representatives vote for. When you look at that, this Electoral College votes that they're trying to get are from states that have mining and that where fracking brings in a lot of income. So they're trying to pull in those people. And that's their one last, Hail Mary is he wants to get rid of it. He wants to get rid of it. He wants to get rid of it. Well, no, he wants to get rid of it by 2050. He wants us to start transitioning away from it. If we actually do that, there will be replacement jobs.
Yeah, that's right. And that's what I think I was watching Pence this morning, so he was saying that 100,000 jobs will be lost here, 100,000 jobs will be lost there, blah, blah, and just obviously trying to ramp up that. I can't remember exactly where the rally was, but obviously really trying to, ramp everyone up, saying, oh, you will lose your job if Biden gets voted,
Yeah.
you will lose this, you will lose that.
And you'll lose it right away.
Yeah.
Not in 30 years while they're creating new jobs. You'll lose it now. And
Yeah.
not true.
But
that's their one last Hail Mary. They're trying to get the votes.
Yeah.
And hopefully they're not. I heard this morning that Trump's actually getting closer in the swing states. His numbers are going up.
Oh, wow.
Which scares me. Scares me a lot.
Yeah, wow.
See? I might be moving to Australia.
Well, yeah, actually, funny you say that. That was literally my next question. Is you've just stated that if Trump wins, that you would move to Australia.
No, do not only do that. Do not.
How real is that statement? And do you know any other people that have that same belief that they'd want to move to another country or to back where they originated from, or is that a common census?
No, it's a saying and an expression. I only know of a couple people who actually tried to move to Canada last go around.
Okay.
Like they truly tried. It's interesting. So like I was talking to my dad about it, who is from Western Australia, right? And I was saying, if this goes bad 2-3 years down the line, depending on what he ends up doing with education, access to healthcare for people with special needs, things like that, I might move to Australia or go somewhere else, at least for a bit, because it won't be as shameful.
Yeah.
Like I won't be in as much personal agony over what he's doing. And what my dad said, and what I am aware of, there is no perfect place to be. Politicians are always going to annoy you, but we live in a bubble. California is a bubble. It's going to take a long time for anything that Trump does really to get into California, because it's so blue, it's so democratic, that I probably will not end up moving, but I do know people who have.
Yeah.
My dad also said, I like it here. I like the weather. I like this stuff. One of the reasons I left Australia in the first place was because of the Labour Party and all their crazy stuff. So why do you keep moving? No one's ever going to satisfy you.
Yeah. And
it's true. One of the hardest things, though, from the last election, one of the funny reasons I'd go to Australia, is it's the amount of hate, because I grew up in California, which was a bubble, and I was not blind to hatred, despite the fact that I'm blonde hair, blue eyes, pale skin. Like I did witness some stuff, is that everything was underneath the surface, and it wasn't very blatant.
Yeah.
Blatant prejudice, blatant racism. Like it wasn't. There were people making naive decisions of things that they didn't know, kind of thing, like being like, oh yeah, I love eating watermelon and chicken.
Yeah.
And that, like, to us, it's totally fine. And then you realize the historical, like, significance of that.
Yeah.
Now, since then, I feel that blatant racism and prejudice is more prevalent, and it's very hard to deal with. It's very annoying.
Yeah.
And very upsetting to have to be around, which is why Australia might not be the best replacement for you. That's why people are going to Canada. But it is. I mean, Trump has gotten rid of the stuff about teaching systemic racism. Trump does not believe it exists. Yeah, so there's just a lot of disadvantage, and watching it is frustrating, which is why people want to move.
Well, speaking of California, kind of transitions into a kind of off-topic question, and I hope I did my research, got the right person here. In your opinion, your state governor, Gavin Newsom, is that correct?
Yep.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. How has he handled the pandemic, I guess, in comparison to other state governors and also other world leaders that you know of? How's he handled it in, I guess, terms of keeping everyone calm, keeping everyone informed, I guess?
Yeah. So, here's the tricky part. I believe that, one, coronavirus exists. Two, it is heavily contagious. theory, everyone should be wearing a mask as a courtesy,
Yeah.
right? Like if you go out, if I wear a mask, it protects you from me. If you wear a mask, it protects me from you. Like everyone should be doing those
Yeah.
things like that. So assuming you believe all those things, I think he's doing a good job. I really do. Compared to if you look at Texas, or I think at one point, Illinois, I know they had like the Chicago mayor was mandating everyone wear a mask, if I'm right, or maybe this was Atlanta and Georgia. But the governor was saying, no, you can't do that, and things like that. That I have a problem.
Yeah.
So compared to those kind of people, I think he's doing a good job. And that goes back to the same thing, though, that I said at the beginning of this, where you have your team Democrat and your team Republican, and team Republican governors, a lot of them are going, nope, no masks, you can't mandate it. Nope, because masks have become political when they shouldn't be.
No, it's happened here as well.
Yeah. So for that reason, I think Newsom's doing a good job. He's doing a lot of press conferences. They're very long. They're coming up with standards, protocols, procedures, and then originally they came up with them, and then people kind of like could jump the line. So like San Diego didn't have the numbers that they were supposed to have before reopening all the restaurants for in person, or no, it was bars in person. And San Diego tried to jump the gun. Our numbers went high. And then the state came in and said, nope, we're backing this up. We're going to be following these procedures, which is really good.
Yeah.
He came out with procedures. You remember me sending you that tweet by the superintendent of my school district, which we will not name, so I don't get in trouble.
Yeah, I do remember.
Where Newsom came up with really good, thorough guidelines for going back to school. I didn't agree with all of them. I saw loopholes in them, but he at least tried, where before that we didn't have a standard that people had to meet. And then my superintendent called it, was it child abuse, I think he said?
Yeah.
Said it's child abuse, that you're not letting the kids go back to school and things like that. So my superintendent would have told you governor's not doing a good job. I tell you, he was, and he adjusted those requirements to allow kids from low socioeconomic backgrounds or with severe special needs to come back to school earlier and kind of do like a trickle effect, which was really good. So he's adjusting things. So for that reason, I like him. I didn't know his name before all this happened, though. I had no idea what his name was. No idea. I can tell you, the Senate and whatnot, like Pelosi and all that stuff, the House of Representatives, but I couldn't tell you the California governor. I still thought we had Jerry Brown.
Well, guess that's why I had to do my research on who it was, because in Australia, obviously, all we've heard about is obviously who's running for president, obviously like Biden, Trump, but excluding them, all we've heard about from America is it Cuomo is the governor of...
I love Cuomo, in New York.
Yeah, he's literally the only one that we've heard about in Australia, because he was like all over the news here in Australia when New York obviously blew up, and I have to say he speaks really well. Like
I was gonna say, how do you think he came across? Good.
Yeah, I really like him. Like I didn't know obviously a lot of what he was talking about as such, obviously. Yeah. But yeah, he's very likable. He, I guess, comes across like he knows what he's talking about. Mm-hmm. Just from like first impression was, I think I watched about a 30-40 minute speech that he said, and he handled every question. He didn't dance around questions, which is my biggest thing. If I'm looking at political candidates, if that's in local or state or federal, if a politician dances around a question, they've already lost some respect for me. Because if you're a politician, you can't answer a question or even answer it a little bit, then like I'm not even going to look at you, really, because it just shows that your kind of character, really, your overall character. If you dance around a question and don't give people an answer, how do you think people are going to relate to you? And there's always behind each question, even if it's a small group or a big group, there's a group of, I would say fans, for lack of a better word, about that topic of that question. So if you dance around that question of that topic, you've lost that group of voters. For example, if a politician danced around a question about education, and there was a big group of people that vote solely on education, or not solely, but mainly on education, they won't be voting for that person because we can't trust this person that they're going to meet our interests or anything like that. So, yeah, that's the one thing I say about Kwame was I did not get that from him, that he danced around any question. And that was just as New York blew up. And it was all over the world because of the cases and whatnot. So, yeah. Speaking of that,
I thought he did very well, but I know people who are 100% Team Trump who just ripped him to shreds on Facebook and things like that. They just hated Cuomo, and I'm sitting there going, he's doing fine. No, he's killing the economy. Do you know how high the numbers are?
Yeah.
In New York right now? Like, you have to.
Yeah.
Go ahead. What were you going to say?
Oh, it was speaking of governors and stuff. Got a funny story. I actually knew a bit about Mike Pence when he was running for governor of Indiana because I'm a big Survivor fan, and the Liberal candidate was Rupert. Rupert Bonham from Survivor was running as a Liberal candidate as governor of Indiana, and I actually followed that race because I thought, I wonder how close Rupert can get. I think he ended up getting 100,000 votes compared to, I think, Pence was about 2.5 million votes, something like that. And I'd actually heard of Pence because of that, and then didn't really hear about him since. So then, when he was announced as a running mate, I'm thinking, oh, okay, like he's a really good speaker. Like, as I'd watched some of his interviews and stuff when Rupert was running, and I thought, oh, he's a really good talker. He seems like he's likable. I didn't know anything about him. I didn't know his policies or anything like that. And then watching the debate with him and Harris, I still had the impression that he is likable in the fact that the way he talks and everything like that. I don't know any of his policies, or I'm not for him nor against him, but he seems like he's very likable. He kept, obviously, like, thanking everyone as much as he could. He knows how to talk.
Yeah.
And then you have Harris, who I kind of liked because she was kind of different. She was like kind of, how to say it. Her personality was like she'd get in a dogfight if she had to. Like, she doesn't care. Like, she'll get her shit done if she wants it done. And they're both very different on the edge of the board. Like, two different people. And that leads into my next question for you is, were either of those, do you think, better candidates to run for president? If you could swap, would you swap either of them for their counterpart, or?
Honestly, I do not agree with everything that Pence does. I do not. Like, some of his stuff on even women's rights. Pence, along with Trump, still believe women should be at home and not working, things like that.
Yeah.
But I would swap Pence for Trump in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
Between them. Because we're not respected anymore by other countries.
Yeah.
Like, I remember being in Lesotho. Do you know how small Lesotho is?
No.
In Africa? It is a itty bitty little country in Africa before the, 2016 election. And the border crossing guard was telling me, you're going to be back by the election, right? You can't have this Trump guy be your president.
Wow.
Itty bitty little low, like, income country.
Yeah, wow.
And that guy was telling me, you can't have this guy be your president. So I would switch Pence for Trump. And I do think Pence would get more votes from the people like my mom and things like that. He would. Yeah. Because maybe not now, but if back, because now people are saying, well, he's aligned with Trump. My dad said, he's never going to vote for anyone who's ever supported Trump. Down the line, he will never vote for him because he can't trust them.
Yeah.
You can't trust politicians anyway, but you cannot trust that person, and he's right. Between Biden and Harris, I would stick with Biden because Harris is seen as very left.
Oh, okay.
Her views on things are seen as being very left. And the thing about that, a different election, maybe she'd stand a chance. But right now, you need someone who will bring people together. I think Biden is more likely to pull people from the right, so from the Republican Party, over than Harris. I think Harris would be like Hillary, where you have the people going, well, I can't vote for her. I can't.
Yeah.
And nothing against her, but I don't think she'd be able to pull people like Biden can. Also, I think Harris kind of has my personality. I think she's fine. But Biden is seen as a lot more of like a warm person to
Yes.
people,
Yeah,
an
I agree.
accepting kind of grandfather figure,
Yeah.
which pulls people in.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, but
I think I would
I
stick with Biden.
definitely agree with that. Yeah, Biden does come off as like a old bloke that would happily sit at the bar with you, have a beer, comfort you if something happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, whereas like I said, Harris, like, don't get me wrong, I think Harris is likable, but like I said, she also, I could see that she could rub people the wrong way in certain press conferences and whatnot. So you said that you think Pence would have got more votes than Trump. Is that because you think that Pence is more likable, or that his policies would have been...
I think he has a stronger sense of policy. He wouldn't have gone out and said all the stuff that Trump said. It's not that he might have not thought it.
Yeah.
You know, he might have thought the racist, xenophobic kind of thoughts, but he wouldn't have gone out and blatantly said them everywhere. He wouldn't have brought down the level of respect that other countries have for us, or fear, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Right? Because some countries do fear us and us withdrawing money and support. So I think for those reasons, he would have gotten more votes.
Yeah.
But people also were done with the regular government, and they thought, oh, what did he say? He'll clean out the swamp or drain the swamp, something like that.
Yeah.
Which is why he got the votes that he got. He also was spewing beliefs that other people bought into, and they thought, oh, this is a president like me. Because it's not the first time. If you look at like Jimmy Carter, even Reagan to an extent, that we had someone come in who was kind of an outsider. You know, Jimmy Carter and Reagan, they were governor for like a year, but not much, or one term, right? Both of them, I think, were just one term, but not much more than that.
Yeah.
And so it's not the first time that we got a complete outsider, but he would have gotten.
And not that Obama was an outsider, but he was very, very inexperienced in politics as such. But I guess still has more experience than Trump.
Yeah, so he knew the judicial system though, and he knew laws and things like that because he worked as a lawyer. Yeah. So he at least had that background knowledge. Meanwhile, Trump saying that even during this campaign, will go out and say, well, I'll do this. And it's like, well, no, you can't. That's why we have checks and balances.
Yeah.
Like, he's tried to do things where people are like, no, bring it back. I don't think Pence would have done that as many times.
Yeah.
I mean, we all try to push the envelope in some way. We all do.
Yeah.
But I don't think Pence would have done everything that Trump has done.
So do you think Pence will be a shoo-in as the next Republican candidate for president, or...
I think that depends on how this election goes. I think if Trump wins, then yes. I think if Trump loses, you're going to get someone like Marco Rubio or something like that, because they're going to try to have to play more towards the middle.
Yeah.
Those people who are in the middle, if they lose. If they win, then yes, it's going to be Pence for sure, I think. Because Pence is going to be seen as like the follower of this far right, this is where we're going direction. But if they lose, they're going to get someone like Marco Rubio, who is open to immigration and things like that.
Yeah. I guess a topic that's probably as big as it's ever been, obviously, with the coronavirus pandemic, is jobs and unemployment. Because I know it's a problem here and it's a problem everywhere. There was a stat that brought up that I thought was very, very interesting, that they had each president lined up and the amounts of jobs that were created or given in that time period. And I don't know why I was surprised, but to my surprise, Bill Clinton absolutely eclipsed everyone, and he was on 23 million jobs. I think it was 23 million jobs created / given, so obviously jobs that were there and not just created. And then obviously Trump is in -4 because of obviously the pandemic and whatnot. So I actually was meaning to get the numbers that Trump had before the pandemic, but I've heard that they still weren't great.
Well, so this is what I know of him. I remember you tagged me in that, and remember I said, well, this isn't quite fair because of the pandemic.
Yeah.
So I don't like Trump personally, but I do feel you have to be fair when you look at all those numbers. And what I've heard from multiple sources bipartisan sources, meaning they are not one way or the other necessarily, which is very hard to find nowadays. Trump's did have an upward trajectory, but it was continuing along the trend that formed during Obama's time as president.
Yeah, okay.
So it was going up and it was continuing to go up. So it's not necessarily that he did something different. My understanding is that there wasn't a huge jump. It was just continuing to go, on the same slope. So in that case, he didn't. I do think it's bad when they go, well, we're in the greatest recession and he lost all these jobs. Well,
Yeah, it's hard to.
That's I do not agree with how he's handled it at all.
Yeah.
I look at Australia is different, obviously. You're an island far away from everyone else.
Yeah.
But, you look at Europe. Europe did get a couple good months there. They had a couple good months. We didn't really have that. And we weren't listening to our scientists and things like that. But that he was following along a trend that was already there. I don't know about Clinton. I was very young then. I don't remember.
Yeah.
You weren't even born.
Well, I guess that actually leads perfectly into my next question as well. I know it might be different for you guys over America, but in Australia, even if you lived through the time period when they were running or not, there's a general consensus that everyone kind of agrees on our two greatest prime ministers, Bob Hawke and John Howard, for different reasons.
Off the drinking one?
Yeah. Yeah, because he was speaking about swinging voters from different parties. That's what Hawke did. Hawke is the only Labor prime minister or candidate to actually get a lot of Liberal voters to vote for him because of his policies, his likability, his love for Australia. It wasn't anything like Make Australia Great Again or anything like that, but
yeah.
But it was I've spent a lot of time looking back on his speeches and his interviews, and he did literally personify what it meant to be a proud Australian, and that's why he was so liked. And John Howard is, I guess, his biggest thing he's remembered for is obviously the gun laws. Now, if there's any Americans listening to this that don't, or any other foreigners that don't know what John Howard did, was we had a mass shooting in the mid to late 90s. John Howard came out and said, all right, everyone that's got a gun has to have a license. It has to be locked up. The ammunition has to be separate. Yeah, ammunition has to be kept separate. Not only did the ammunition and the guns have to be in separate safes or in separate spots, they actually have to have different codes or different keys to get
and into. The keys can't be kept together.
Exactly. So it's really tight, and
and people can randomly come and check, which I think is very good.
Yes, that actually
happened. By the way, I am pro-gun, but I fully support this.
Yeah, well, that's what happened to Emily's grandpa a couple of years ago. Was he wasn't home, and the police, they then rocked up to the house. His wife was home, and they said, "Oh, we're here to check up on the guns, make sure everything's up to scratch, blah blah blah." And they tried to trick her and say, "Oh, is so and so here?" And she said, "No, he's not." And they're like, "Oh, can you open it for us?" And she obviously was smart enough to say, "No, I don't know the code." And they obviously were testing her, because if she did know the code, he would have lost all of his guns. He would have lost his gun license for a certain period of time, and I think the fine is pretty big. I think it's more than $5,000. So, when a lot of foreigners find out about our gun laws, they nearly fall over because.
But he did all that. What's really impressive to me is he did all that within months.
Yeah, he got it. He got
it
done. Yeah,
and then even New Zealand, with what just happened, months.
Yeah.
Done.
And I think that also come down to obviously a lot of fear around the last. I can't remember exactly the last one that kind of happened before the gun laws, but there was a few big ones that happened, and Australians were scared. They were fed up, and even Labor voters, everyone was all for these gun laws. There's obviously a few. Like we have our own party in Australia, it isn't very big, but it's got its loyal supporters. It's the Fishing, Gun and Leisure Party, which they're the only people that oppose these laws.
On my shirt. This is the kind of shirt they would wear.
Yeah.
The country roads take me home kind of shirt.
Yeah.
But
they're the only ones that have tried to reverse it, but that's actually never been a policy that any other Labor candidate or any other independent or anything like that have tried to overturn. Every person kind of still under the impression that no, we're keeping the gun laws. You know, I think we've only had, I think, 2 shootings since then. I think '97 was the year that Howard brought the law in. We had 2 since then, and when you compare it to not only America, because everyone always likes to obviously bring up America's mass shootings, but elsewhere in the world as well. You look at South American countries and even some European countries as well. So you've stated obviously that you're pro guns and stuff like that, but you also stated that you're not against the laws. Would you be for America doing that law or something maybe a bit looser?
Something very similar to that, maybe a little looser. The thing is, also England, right? England has very strict gun laws. And part of that is one of the benefits of that is they have such strict gun laws, and it's so hard for criminals to get hold of guns that police officers don't carry guns.
Yeah.
So therefore, there's less police shootings, things like that. I was raised, so where I'm from is called the city and the country. I guess you weren't on the tour where people kept making fun of me and calling me a redneck all the time, although I do have redneck tendencies. I grew up, I've known how to shoot a gun from a very young age. We'd shoot the rabbits that were eating the stuff on the hill, things like that. My dad had us shooting milk bottles, things like that. So like I grew up around guns. I feel safe about guns, but part of that is I've also was educated about guns.
Yeah.
You know, I know how to be safe with a gun, things like that. Other people who are not scare me to death, and they should not be touching a gun. That being said, we have a whole bunch of shootings. I actually know someone, the Santee shooting, who got shot in the back. He still has 2 bullets in his back.
Wow.
His brother was petrified of bathrooms, the public bathrooms after that, because that's where he was shot, things like that. Even when I was in Australia last time, not even a mile down the road, right over the fence, really, is where the synagogue shooting was.
Yes, yeah.
And guns are a big issue, and it's so easy to get a gun.
Yeah.
It's so easy to get a gun here. It's ridiculous. And I think we've had this conversation before. I understand having a gun to get rid of the rabbits, or you can use a pellet gun for that. You know, there are purposes, or there are times that maybe you want to go out and go hunting. I have a lot of family that goes hunting for recreational. That's fine. But I don't think you should be allowed to have automatic rapid fire guns.
Yeah.
It makes no sense to me. I don't think you should need multiple automatic rapid fire guns.
Well, that's something that Biden's against too, isn't he? Biden, I only just seen that Biden wants assault rifles not banned, but obviously he wants certain laws around them. But Trump is obviously, he's pro. That's something I don't understand. How can someone like Trump be pro assault rifles?
Because it gets them votes.
Yeah.
It gets them votes. So one of the things about it is the gun, American Gun Federation, I don't remember what it's called. They do a lot of lobbying and donate a lot of money to all these campaigns and everything. So a lot of people will support them. And when they try to get things into place, like I support a lot of what Australia does. I think you guys also have multiple background checks. The fact that you can come and check on the guns at any point. Yeah,
it's a long process. Not only is it long, but it's also expensive and hard. I looked at getting a paintball gun, and I needed a gun license.
Really? Okay, see, that's where we differ. You can have a pellet gun, you can have a paintball gun, because you can do, if you have a pellet gun, you can take care of the rabbits. You're not going to need a full thing, but if you have to take care of a bigger animal, or if you're going hunting, if you're going deer hunting and you actually do something with the deer, you're gonna need a proper shot to be able to do it, right? Because I don't support using something weak like a pellet gun that's just going to injure the animal. Yeah. And then the animal goes off. But you need policies and procedures in place, background checks, things like that, following up, knowing where the gun is. It's really important, I think. And it also decreases the likelihood that we would have these mass shootings, or, we have school lockdown drills, and I've been in schools when we had real lockdowns, not guns, but someone hopping the fence or something like that. It's extremely terrifying. At one point, One of my schools once told me, well, if an intruder comes in with a gun, you're supposed to protect your students. And I said, with what?
Oh,
What am I
wow.
supposed to support them with? And they recommended we get a bat.
Wow.
And I said, you want me to go at a guy with a gun with a softball bat? That is your solution to this problem. Like, it makes
Wow.
no sense. And I don't support some legislators are trying to make it so teachers have guns.
Wow.
And I don't support that either.
Yeah.
But having that control, decreasing the amount of guns out there, I think would be very beneficial. And it's just guns I can go on about for a long time because no one should have 50 guns. I have a cousin who's a gunsmith. He collects guns. He tweaks guns. That's what he does. But you shouldn't have 50 guns that can fire.
Yeah.
That are rapid fire. You look at these people who call themselves militias. No, they're homegrown terrorist groups that they're now calling militias. They're not actually militias when you look at the origin of the word. And they are coming to rallies with huge automatic, like rifles and stuff, huge automatic guns with a whole bunch of ammunition. And my uncle actually, I remember when Trump was elected, there was a new law passed in California, and I might be wrong about this, but it is that you have to account for every single bullet that you buy.
Wow.
And he was very, very upset about that. And that is something that's California trying to regulate guns, right?
Yeah.
But I don't necessarily agree with you have to be able to tell me where you shot every single bullet. And I might not be understanding this law. But that I don't agree with necessarily.
Yeah, wow.
But I do agree with you have to keep your bullets and your guns separate. You need 2 different keys. You can't keep them in the same place.
Yeah.
Because it is easy for kids to get to them. The other issue I have is that they make guns, I believe it'd be the same in Australia, extremely easy to tweak and turn into automatics.
Yeah.
Especially now with 3D printers.
Yeah, I did actually say something about that. Yeah, it's scary to think about, really, isn't it?
Yeah, but that's how it is, and that's not right. And also, did you know, well, I guess you would now with the Breonna Taylor thing, if someone comes into your house and, like an intruder,
Yeah.
you honestly, you don't shoot to wound. You have to shoot to kill, because if you wound them, they can sue you for distress and their medical bills and everything else, which is horrible. But I remember sitting around the table years ago with my family discussing this. My sister said, yep, that's the law. They can sue you for distress, even though they broke into your house.
That's incredible.
You have to shoot to kill. Where now Breonna Taylor, depending on whether or not you believe the police actually announced themselves or not, the police officer who was shot by her boyfriend is suing her boyfriend for distress.
Wow. And have those cops been charged in that case? Have they been charged yet, or is that still?
Sorry, I'm laughing because it's so sad. It's extremely sad. So they had the grand jury. The grand jury claims, or the grand jury now, 2 of the people are claiming that they really only heard the option of charging the one guy who accidentally shot into a neighbor's house. Like the bullet went through the wall or whatnot. That's the one charge that you could charge someone with, and they are charging that guy for that.
Wow.
But according to the grand jury, they didn't hear anything about manslaughter or anything like that for Breonna Taylor being. Yeah, it's interesting. But that's where, if we were like Britain, where it was harder to have the guns, so our police didn't have to carry guns.
Yeah.
It would be beneficial. But at the same time, I have family that's a police officer. If they're going to have a semi-automatic, I kind of feel more comfortable with my family having.
Yeah, well, that's all right.
Something, and a police officer can shoot to injure and not get sued.
Yeah.
Because they have that immunity. But guns are interesting, and honestly, I think it's so political and it's so corrupt that nothing's ever going to be done about it. Because we've had multiple mass shootings.
Yeah.
We have more mass shootings probably in a year here than Australia's ever had.
Yeah.
In a month, more than Australia. We have more than we even hear about, which is insane.
Well, I guess reverting back to what started the conversation John had with Bob Hawke is that, I guess, in America, is there anyone that, I guess because the Republicans and Democrats are so obviously opposing, is is there a consensus that there's a president that's, the best president of all time, or a few that are considered that everyone can kind of agree on, or is it kind of like, nah, he was crap, he was good, he was crap?
Remember when we found that list?
Yeah,
I'm trying to remember who it was, but I remember Lincoln I agreed with.
yeah, because he was.
Lincoln was like top five,
Yeah,
I think, right?
I think it was top three, but I'm not sure of the exact placing. But he was top three, I think, from
Yeah.
memory.
Roosevelt would probably be up there because of what he did during the Depression. Kind of like how you guys have the Great Ocean Road and workers got to go work on the road
Yeah.
and whatnot. He created a bunch of jobs and helped get us out of the Depression.
Was there two Roosevelts, or am I?
There were.
There were.
Yeah.
There was Teddy Roosevelt and
Theodore. All right, no, Theodore and oh my goodness, Roosevelt. Was it? So there's Franklin and Teddy.
Yeah.
And then they were related through Eleanor.
Ah, yes, okay.
I mean, they were related anyway. They were some amount of cousins, but Eleanor had the direct relation to the other one. But yeah, they're both, I think, well received overall. But I'm trying to think of who else more recently. I mean, Kennedy, I think Kennedy was much higher on that list than I thought he should have been.
Yeah, because how long did he serve? Did he? I can't even.
He didn't finish his first term.
Yeah, I didn't think he did.
I don't think so.
Because then his brother was assassinated also, which I've watched countless conspiracy videos about. Is it they?
Poor Woody Harrelson's father.
Yeah.
Woody.
Was it Robert Kennedy? Was the second one that was going to run? His brother, John Kennedy? Yeah.
Both, or not both the brothers, there were more than two, but Robert and, who was the other one? Robert and Kennedy, who drove the car off the bridge with the girl in it and then didn't tell anyone about it until like hours or days later.
Yeah, was it Ted Kennedy?
Yes, there we go, yeah. Oh, I was trying to Google the name, and the second thing after I put in K-E-N was Kennedy car.
Oh.
But yeah, so both of them tried to run and tried to get on the ballot.
Yeah.
They are Democrats, right? Yeah, for the Democrat ballot. But Robert got shot during it, Bobby Kennedy.
Well, no, yeah, I know.
I think he's more famous. I think JFK is more famous because he got shot.
Yeah.
And because he had so many affairs.
Yeah.
Than because of his actual policy. I mean, he did try to do the stuff for racial equality and things like that, but I've heard that would have happened regardless.
Oh, I know, as an Australian, the only president that I ever heard, well, obviously pre-Trump, the only president I heard that a lot of people agreed was terrible was obviously Richard Nixon, for obvious reasons. But then you kind of compare him to Trump. Like, obviously Trump has never had to stand down or anything like that, but it's kind of, in comparison, is Trump worse than Nixon, or is Nixon worse? I guess it's hard to compare, but
I was gonna say, I don't know. I feel like it's kind of apples and oranges because
Nixon stood by himself, as a president that no one could come close to him for so long. But now Trump's entered the conversation.
Yeah, Trump is at least the close runner-up. I think they both lied. They both have things going on underneath the table. They both, impeached but not found guilty. Honestly, I think they're both horrible. I do not know which one would be worse. I really don't. They're both just, I wouldn't want either, but I don't know. Well, the other thing that's annoying about our system is you guys, if your part, the party that's in control isn't liking the prime minister, they can be like, all right, you're out. Bye-bye.
Yeah, literally.
We're going to bring in this one. Because they vote from within.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen.
But that's
here.
also, speaking of that.
Trump would have never gotten in with yours.
But speaking of that, though, that's why we become a political laughing stock for a couple of years. Stephen Colbert and John Oliver would love it because I think from when Kevin Rudd got voted in 2007, I remember that because his motto was Kevin 07. From 2007 until now, I think we've had 4 or 5 changes of Prime Minister without a vote happening. So obviously a vote within the party, not so much, people like me voting, but it's, Kevin Rudd got backstabbed by Julia Gillard. She became Prime Minister. He then backstabbed her back, become Prime Minister again. Tony Abbott became Prime Minister. He got backstabbed by Malcolm Turnbull, and then he got backstabbed by our current Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, ScoMo. So
it's interesting though. I don't think, have you guys had a Prime Minister actually fill his or her entire term in the last 10 years?
Not since John Howard.
Yeah, I don't think you have.
Yeah, not since John Howard got voted in after Bob Hawke in the early to mid 90s, and he was one of our longest. It
was all the way back to the 90s before someone filled their last term.
Yeah, and I guess what's different with America and Australia is, not that it would ever happen, but a Prime Minister could serve 20 years if he wanted to, if his
party kept voting him,
Yeah, if he kept getting voted in by his party as a candidate and kept getting voted in by the people, then he could serve as long as he wants. Now, that's the other question to you is, would you like that policy in America, or you're happy with the 2 terms and they're done?
I'm happy with the 2 terms, which is because of one of the Roosevelts. I think Franklin.
Yeah.
I think it was Franklin. That they created that because I think he was it for 12 years, 10 years, 12 years. It has to be 12 because it's done in groups of 4. But no, I think you need new people and new ideas.
Yeah.
I think you need to do it that way.
Well, I think that's what kind of was the end of John Howard's run. Was I think he ended up running. Yeah, it would have had to have been. He would have had to have been Prime Minister for 10 or more years. Was when Kevin Rudd come through. Was, he was fresh, he was new, and a lot of people were saying, do you vote the devil you know in John Howard, or do you take a chance at a guy that's going to bring more freshness to Australia with a guy that's been serving for a long period of time, one of the longest serving ever? And that's what got Kevin Rudd the swing votes from a lot of independents and a lot of liberals coming over to Labor, was that was pretty much the difference. And for some, I never understood why, because Kevin Rudd wasn't much younger than John Howard, but he won because he got the young vote. And I don't know how, but a lot of people make jokes it's because how John Howard threw a cricket ball. He absolutely butchered it. That's a running joke.
I get that. That is an odd throw. You can't actually pull your arm back. Throwing a cricket ball is hard. But what you're saying is kind of how we ended up with Trump.
Yeah.
Hillary was the devil you knew that people did not like. And then Trump was new. Well, maybe it will be better.
Yeah.
And so they did it. But it's interesting. I don't think it would be good for the U.S. if we had the same people again and again and again. Yeah. I think you need new, fresh people.
Yeah.
New ideas, new policy, things like that.
Yeah. Well, that pretty much concludes my questions. Is there anything that you'd want to discuss or ask me in comparison to you guys, or?
I think. Well, Holt, isn't that the one who went into the ocean? That one fascinates me. What did you got on him?
Harold Holt, yeah. Yes,
Prime Minister who disappeared into the ocean. Yeah,
so Harold Holt, actually, a lot of people learn about Harold Holt because there's a saying here in Australia that's a bit morbid, but it's, wow, you're as optimistic as Harold Holt's wife leaving the porch light on. Now that refers to, because a lot of people might, especially non-Australians won't know this, that Harold Holt was our Prime Minister in the 60s. He went for a swim at the beach, apparently under supervision by his people.
One friend.
Yeah. And he disappeared. Completely disappeared, never found his body, never know nothing. There's a lot of conspiracy theories, blah, 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 but I think it's come to a conclusion that he got caught in a rip because that part of the beach is known to have treacherous rips and has done ever since, and still does to this day at this certain beach. I can't think of the name now, but he's our only ever Prime Minister to not finish his term because either he went missing or died. We've never had a Prime Minister die while in charge, but because when he was technically still in charge, he wasn't proclaimed dead. He was still missing. So then someone else took over, and then it was a while later that they actually pronounced him dead. So yeah, that actually is how I come across the saying. Was, I think it was young footy days, and I said, I'm going to kick 10 goals this game, and someone said, oh wow, you're as optimistic as Harold Holt's wife leaving the porch light on for him. I'm like, what do you mean? And he's like, Google it. And I did a lot of research and read all the conspiracy theories about it. And yeah, a lot of I have met a few Americans, a few British people that are very intrigued by that story. That because I guess they think that they couldn't imagine of I guess back then of I think it was Nixon would have been serving at that point in time, but someone like Nixon or Reagan or someone going swimming and going missing, like unfathomable. Like no one could miss that happening.
Those people are probably from states that do not border water.
Yeah.
My guess.
Yeah.
I could definitely see that happening.
Yeah.
But no, it's just that one always fascinated me. I think one of the things that I would like about your guys' like election process though is yours is only 5 weeks. Like I was out there for the entirety of the last election. And I just remember watching and going, wait, what? That's it?
Yeah.
And there weren't a whole bunch of campaign ads. You've seen some of the YouTube recommendations that come up on my phone. Every ad is just a campaign ad because you guys also have set budgets, which I kind of like.
Yeah.
You get this one. You get this one. These are your budgets.
Yeah.
And it wasn't, so I felt like it wasn't hitting me over the head. I mean, and I was in, where was I during that? No, because then V and I came out. So we did Victoria and we went, because we saw you right before it too.
Yeah.
Because we did the whole Nellen board, came back, and then I was in South Australia again on actual election day. I was there when my friend went to go vote.
Yeah.
But there weren't ads everywhere. We were listening to the radio a lot because we were driving a lot. If there weren't here, you just are constantly hit over the head with it for about a year and a half.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
I
guess what happens here, like, I don't know what it's like in America or like anywhere else, but it's like obviously you have certain people running for certain seats in certain areas of states and whatnot, and we get more caught up in who our local candidates are than more so who they're actually representing in the long run. So obviously I think Mount Gambier's actually got the record. We've had a Liberal in the seat of federal parliament for 117 years straight.
Holy moly.
There hasn't been an independent or a Labor person in charge of our, we're known as Barker. We haven't had, anyone other than a Liberal person run our area for over 100 years. And that's what we get more caught up in. A lot of people are like, oh, no, I don't want to vote for him, but I like Scott Morrison. I'll say, well, if you vote for him, his vote's going to go towards Scott Morrison because he's going to get his seat, which will go towards Scott Morrison regaining his position. And it's funny, a lot of people still don't understand the way that it works here is you may not like your local person from your party running, but in the long run, if you like the leader of the party, so Scott Morrison, then you kind of not bite the bullet, but vote for that person because you know it's going to go towards the person you want in charge of the country, not just your area. But it's crazy. A lot of people, like even my age, who don't quite understand how it works. They're like, oh no, I want to vote this person, which will be a Labor person for local, but yet they want a Liberal like Scott Morrison to run the country. So they don't still quite understand how it works. Mm-hmm. But I always get like caught up in like the local, like I will try and go to like the local. I guess they're more Q&As than debates. So they'll just get. Normally there's about 4 or 5 candidates running. They'll get them up on the stage, all with their own microphone. They'll get asked a question by someone in the crowd, and they all, just take a turn and answer the question. So it's not as exciting as a Biden or Trump debate, but
both of those are ridiculous. But I think for any Americans who are listening, our way of voting is nowhere near similar to the Australian way. Where you guys are, though, you vote for your local people, and then once your local person gets enough votes, then they like designate who their vote will go to. And like that's how you can get all those independents in there. Yeah. Which is great because right now in America, I feel like you need more independents or people who are willing to cross the line, bipartisanship. Yeah. And you get that through independence. And
I think
problem is you don't want to throw away your vote and vote for an independent.
Well, no, that's right. Yeah, I guess.
For voting.
Yeah, and I guess I think it should be I don't think it's better now because obviously I haven't been in school for like 6, 7 years. But there needs to be more education about how it works here, like with the elections, if that be state parliament or federal parliament, especially with preferences. Now, a lot of people don't understand how they work, even more so the people don't understand with local seats and whatnot, is that you have to do your research and know whose preferences goes to who. So, if you're a Green, for example, you have to know that their preferences go to Labor. But if you don't want Labor in charge of the country, then don't vote Greens. Like, you have to really do your research on everything about your preferences for the people you want to vote for, everything like that. Or you're just going to, end up voting for someone you like, from the Greens party, but if they don't get in, the preferences go to Labor, or, vice versa. And it's just needs to be, I don't know what it's like with you guys, if you guys actually get taught those types of things with your system in America, but I think it's a problem here that a lot of people grow up not knowing how to vote. Also, they don't have the urge to vote because they've never learned about it. They don't think it matters. They don't care, blah, blah, blah. And that's why we have people that donkey vote or that write stupid names. Yeah.
Calling out on that one. No, so it's interesting. In the U.S., and I will do this little caveat of, I found out a lot that the way that I finished off school is not similar to other people. Like the education I got, my last 2 years of high school, because high school is, our last 2 years of schooling before university, or 4 years, but I wanted to travel. So I did what's called independent study. I taught myself. I would get packets, teach myself, go in, take a test. Every week I'd go in, take a test. I'd finish a course in 4 weeks because that way I was able to work almost full time. Yeah. So while it was public school, I found out that a lot of my instruction was different than other people. But everyone has to take a civics class. I've had to help students that I teach with their civics courses. And that teaches you of how, we have these 3 branches of government and this is how they interact kind of theory. Your vote, really, they tell you, when you vote, you are actually voting for what your electoral college representative will do, because your state as a whole typically votes as one, things like that. And they teach you that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And it is helpful, but there are a lot of people who don't vote because they feel like their vote doesn't matter. But I also took a law class in high school, which taught me a lot about our legal system and how laws are made, and carried out and vetoed and things like that. And I do think we need to know those things, especially with what I do, more so previously than now at my new job, knowing how to protect myself legally, or even just interacting with people out in the community, knowing what makes me vulnerable and what doesn't, is extremely beneficial. And we don't teach kids that kind of stuff. Like, hey, if a police officer says this to you, these are your actual rights.
Yeah.
And these are we don't teach that, and we should. Everything's just cursory. I learned more about the U.S. Constitution and legal system, I feel like, one, helping my dad study for that test. To become a U.S. citizen, because that test is hard.
Yes.
It is really, really hard.
I've heard it's hard here as well.
I passed 2 of your guys' practice ones at that museum in Melbourne. And I was like, how am I passing this? But I think it's because I read Sunburn Nation and then I grew up with my dad. So I was like, I know, I felt so bad. One of my friends had told me that she kept failing. And she actually was trying to become a citizen. Oh. And then there's me, born lucky a citizen. And I'm like, oh, well. But that test, and then also that same year, I had a great history professor in college who really explained this stuff and how it impacts us now and how it is in other countries too, which was really interesting, mainly Canada, Mexico, and England. But it was just really interesting to hear because Americans tend to think it's our way. Everyone does everything just like us. Yeah. This is how it's done. And it's not. Like when my dad and I were talking about me doing this on Halloween, my sister was like, what do you mean they don't vote in their prime minister? Isn't the prime minister the same thing as the president? And we're like, no. What do you mean the prime minister doesn't fill their full term? different. And then we were talking about who's the guy who has to just rubber stamp everything for the queen.
Oh.
The executive or something, the
Yeah.
executive. But because I was saying I'd be great at that. That'd be. If I come out there, the whole thing with Trump happens, I end up jumping ship. That should be my job. I could do that. I could do it. But yeah. How are things with you guys though, with COVID and everything?
So
'Cause you guys are just like a little niche in my mind. Took us a long time to get to you.
yeah.
A long time to get anywhere else after.
Well, I mean, Australia as a whole, we let in a lot of travellers back in. They quarantined for 8 days. We let them back in, and they were the main cause of transmissions and whatnot in New South Wales and Victoria. And we had
Respectable favor.
yeah, and then we had a few of those cruise ships. Those were a lot of the main source for a lot of states' problems. But it's like for South Australia, we so Stephen Marshall, he's our premier, which is I guess is equal to a governor.
Yeah.
He has handled it very, very well. I mean, he's a Liberal guy, so I'm a little bit biased, but he is handled it perfectly because so a lot of states went into lockdown, closed borders to each other. Everyone did that.
WA.
Yeah, well, WA still
My
closed.
people.
Yeah,
My people. I know we're still close.
yeah. But yeah, he found that balance of still making us feel safe, but also we still had lives to live, like to not feel as though we had anything taken away from us or anything like that. But it also comes down to in our area, so Mount Gambier, we've got a population of just under 30,000 people, which is a little blip compared to.
Yeah, I'm Googling. Hold on, I'm Googling my population of the town where I grew up.
So
Hold on, continue.
We had a lot of people in shopping centres and all that wear gloves, wear masks. Everyone was kind of doing the right thing. So everyone took the advice of Stephen Marshall and local politicians and everything like that. We actually only had one case, and that was a guy that travelled. He flew to Adelaide and then he flew here and went straight home and quarantined without any contact with anyone. So excluding him, we didn't have any other cases in Mount Gambier. We had a few cases in smaller towns surrounding us, but we were really, really lucky that we didn't get any, I would say waves. We didn't get any waves here. Adelaide got hit a bit, but as a state of South Australia, we're very lucky, and it's, obviously there's still changes where certain events have to have capped amount of people and stuff like that, but it's, I wouldn't say back to normal, but I mean, it's probably the best it's going to be for a long time for us. Then Victoria, you probably would have heard about Victoria. They got
they just came off lockdown.
Yeah, so they've been in lockdown for a while, and they got their second wave, which was worse than their first wave. They ended up having breaking all records for every every Australian state. They got hit really hard. Dan Andrews, which is their leader, he got hit kind of like what Cuomo probably would have got hit by a lot of opposing people. But yeah, different states handle it different ways. Whereas Western Australia, I actually don't know Western Australia's premier, to be honest. But
sorry, I don't either, and I've spent a lot of time there.
He's actually probably the only one I can't actually even picture what he looks like. But they're still in lockdown, and they actually, my friend Lee, who's a helicopter pilot, he lives there currently. They were actually told only 2-3 weeks ago that they were going to be in lockdown. Well, not lockdown, sorry, that their borders were going to be kept closed until April.
Over Christmas, yeah.
But they've now been told, because I think Scott Morrison kind of made the push to their premier that I think their borders are opening to us, South Australia, in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like a trial
period.
Oh,
really? I haven't seen that yet on Facebook.
Yeah, so that's a trial period for them and us, is we're going to be open to each other. But we're the only ones they're opening to. And then they're going to test Northern Territory if the South Australian one goes well. And then they're going to do Tasmania and Queensland. And then they're going to leave ACT, Victoria and New South Wales probably till after Christmas, I hear. But all depends on... Yeah, all depends on how everything goes with opening the border. So, luckily, my mate Lee and my cousin Tim both can see their families for Christmas, and because with their jobs is Tim works in the mines and Lee's a pilot, is Yeah, Lee can come to South Australia, but when he goes back, he has to quarantine for 14 days, and he can't afford that for his job.
Yeah, I was gonna say taking that
Yeah,
amount of time off work.
yeah, he'll lose his job, and I think the same goes for. I hope they don't mind me saying this, but same goes for Tim because he works in mines. He won't be able to
Yeah.
do the same. So they're very thankful that they're going to be able to come see their families for Christmas. They haven't been able to see for God knows how long now. So
Yeah, since March.
yeah,
Oh, well.
so yeah, I think
I
us.
haven't been to Target since March.
Yeah.
Probably February. Um,
So yeah, I
but yeah,
think
that
as a whole, we're definitely getting there. And with Victoria, they've had I think 2 days straight now of no new cases, no deaths. So they've come out of lockdown. Apparently everyone's handling that with respect and caution, everything they should be. So
that's nice. That's
yeah,
not being fun here.
nah,
Yeah. By the way, I looked it up. So this town that I grew up in, which is like a suburb of San Diego, right? It's an
yeah,
outer suburb. 49,470 people.
yeah,
But I do remember early on you telling me the numbers in Victoria and me telling you, oh, that's our day case just for San Diego. That's how many cases we had today
yeah,
in San
yeah,
Diego, where I feel like here, and I don't know if they're that way in Victoria, we have just kind of almost become numb to it.
yeah,
And you have to constantly remind yourself, like, no, okay. Especially for people going out. I've been very lucky. I've been able to work from home except for 1 day a week. I go in to test students, but I know that can be taken away from me at any point, and that's because I help with my grandma who has dementia.
yeah,
But the people who are there day in and day out, what I've been hearing is you kind of just this is your new normal. You become used to it, and you fall lax, and you might let a student more than 6 feet
yeah,
within that little bubble or something like that. Or you might go and sit with your friend at lunch and forget about something. And it's just really hard. And it's weird to think this is our new lives.
yeah. No,
And for a long time.
yeah. I mean, it's kind of like that's what we've all been told here is like this is what it's going to be like for God knows how long now. So might as well buckle up and get used to it, pretty much. So
Yeah, we were all going to try to go down to WA in March of 2021. My parents were going to do the cruise that goes around Australia, which would be only the second time my mom's ever been to Australia. She's been married to my dad for 35 years. We were second time there.
Oh, wow.
And then COVID happened.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, well, we're not going there for sure. And traveling for me has come to a complete stop. I don't even go hiking because there are people who do this very well. There are.
Yeah.
But I feel like I have to drive far out so that I'm not around the people who are not doing it well. Remember when I told you we went to the beach with my nephew and niece, and my nephew screamed when he saw someone not wearing a mask?
Yeah,
and pointed.
That, yeah.
And the person kept walking right by my nephew, just looking at him like, oh, this is strange. It happened multiple times, but they still walked right by him not wearing a mask. And we just don't have that respect for each other, or the mateship, if you want to call it that, caring about other people's health.
Yeah.
We're very much an individualist kind of country. We think about ourselves first rather than the greater good.
Yeah.
Which I think is one of our biggest issues, where in California, we never really had. I mean, I'm sure if you look at a graph, we did have a down bit, but I don't feel like we ever actually did.
Yeah.
Because I really have not left the house. I think I've been to the grocery store twice. I went to the eye doctor once. That's about it.
Yeah. Wow.
All groceries are delivered. Don't leave the house, really.
Yeah.
It's really weird.
It's like a different world because like you compare that to like here, like obviously where I would call us a big town or a small city of 30,000 people is like I said, nothing's really changed other than the fact that we've had a few of our what do I say? Like our we're going to hit financial problems as a local town because we've had a few things cancelled that are like big tourism things for us, obviously, like everywhere else. We have you probably wouldn't have heard of it, but it's Generations in Jazz, which happens in Mount Gambier once a year, and it attracts over 200,000 people worldwide.
Oh, that's a lot of money.
And it happens at the Barn Steakhouse, which They're a big
Is that my one with the little awning with the balcony up above? That
No,
building that I'm obsessed with?
no, that's the Gambia. That the one that you said looks like it should be New Orleans.
Yes,
Yeah,
I love that one.
that's the Gambia. Whereas the Barney's like in a perfect spot where it's a bit out of town but not too far away, and it's in a big enough spot where they can have the big marquees, and it broke the record. Oh, it's a weird record to have, but it was the biggest marquee ever built in Australian history for this event. It attracts people worldwide. Like, not that I would really, I'm not into jazz, but like the biggest American jazz musicians would come here and perform and everything like that. But obviously, the lack of not only international travel but interstate travel, and obviously not being able to get the big names. They obviously cancelled it this year, but they've cancelled it for May next year because obviously they know that it's not gonna happen. A lot of people are like, oh, that's an early call, and I'm thinking, well, it's not because
Qantas said they're not doing flights.
Yeah, so I think a lot of people are a bit too optimistic so yeah, stuff like that's happened. But I mean, we can still we can go to the movies now. We can sit in cafes where we still have to be certain. If you and your group like know each other, you can sit as close as you want, obviously. But compared to other people in the restaurants and cafes, you have to be a certain amount of distance away. But you don't really notice that because it's part of your living now. Yeah. So as a person living in a town of 30,000 people, it hasn't really affected us. It's affected my job more so because of interstate travel. We have a lot of, because we're close to the Victorian border.
Yeah.
Like a lot of businesses, we've obviously lost that interstate travel. So, and we also, as a business, with the square meter rule we have here for cafes and restaurants and stuff, is that depending on your square meterage of your whole shop, of your whole business, that depends on how many people can be in your shop. So we're a biggish place, so we can, I think our capacity inside is 80, and then we can fit 40 outside. So our max capacity is 120. A lot of other small businesses have struggled because they can only fit a table of 4 people in, or stuff like that. So me personally, it hasn't affected me heaps, but it's affected my job a little bit and my owner, which heart breaks for all the small business owners worldwide, really. Worldwide, because
I mean, here actually they might be able to eat indoors now, but I don't know many people who are in California, like in San Diego. People are still like, no, I want to eat outside. Nope, go we're inside. I went to a bakery last weekend or 2 weekends ago, and I just was going to pick up pastries, you know me, and leave. And it was the first time the second time I've been in a bakery since COVID started, and they kept trying to convince people, because this bakery also does like dine in or dine out, like eating outside. And no one wanted to go eat inside. No one. Yeah, but we'll see. My family in WA, they seem to be split. There's people who say, like you're saying, it hurts the economy. It's horrible. It's horrible for the economy. We're not getting in tourists, which, like Esperance right now would be huge and things like that. Like, we're not getting those tourists and things like that. Or even, the trucks aren't coming through, and mining, and, the miners, like you're saying, who have family who live out because you go for 3 weeks and then you can come back and stuff like that. But I also have people say, it's not even like COVID exists.
That's right.
You can go and meet with people, and I believe V and I are both in this state. She's in Canada and I'm here, but we're not supposed to congregate. Like, more than 2 families or 3 families max are supposed to get together. I think V, it's 2.
Wow.
Or like 6 people or something like that. Where when she said that, I was like, I live in a house with, I don't even know how many people. 8 people. So that's not going to work anyway.
No.
But, it's controlled, where we have Thanksgiving and Christmas coming up. We're not going to be with our extended family, which is 50 people. We're not. It's going to be very small for us, probably a normal person's Thanksgiving of like 12, 15 people. That is 3 homes. But that is it. And everyone really has to quarantine. We have such strict rules, and everyone else doesn't necessarily follow them. Like, our group follows them, but like, we're following the stricter. When you look between the World Health Organization, which Trump made it so we no longer participate in, which is another reason I don't like him, and are like government board rules. My bubble is following the stricter of the two rules. Meanwhile, I know other people who are just going out, hanging with their friends. Oh yeah, I got it, but it's fine. And until they know someone who got it, a lot of people don't realize it. Or I'll say, oh, I know someone who died from it. And they're like, oh, wait, what? Or, oh yeah, I have friends who have gotten it. Wait, what? What do you mean? No one gets it. And it's like, no, it is a real thing.
Yeah.
That's what I think amazes me most, is people not believing it's real.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, all the conspiracy theories I've heard nearly floor me every time I hear them.
Yeah. If I could live, though, somewhere like WA where it just didn't exist, I'd be like, yep, keep that border closed. Yep, it's fine.
Yeah, well, Emily and I, back in September, we actually travelled to Queensland because we didn't book anything.
Yeah.
We thought, nah, we'll wait to see what the climate's like. With cases-wise, Queensland had no cases. We had no cases. We thought, all right, we'll travel, do the right thing. We wore our face masks on the plane, and everyone has to anyway because the airlines, they don't make you.
Out with your face mask with the mesh face mask.
Yeah.
That basketball one freaked me out. I remember, like, don't wear that, and then you said about it you at an airport. I was like, are you wearing the mask?
But in certain parts of Queensland, like in Gold Coast and Mount Tamborine, which is right next to Gold Coast, they have a high population of retirees, and they said they're like, we don't know anything's going on. They're like, because a lot of the people that come through here are Queenslanders, and they're like, we haven't really noticed anything much at all. They're like, we're all retirees. This is a little town on a mountainside. Like, we haven't really known anything, and restrictions didn't really bother us that much, blah, blah, blah. So, it was weird going to Queensland, because even more so than here, every person who talked to was like, oh, you barely know anything's going on. And that's just crazy. And at that time, that's when Victoria was still blowing up. So it's crazy to think that in the same country, that one state could be like that, and then other states like SA and Queensland are saying that nothing's happening, or doesn't feel like anything's happening.
I have a friend from Nebraska, which do not ask me to point out where that is on a map. And for the longest time, it did not hit them in her little town in Nebraska, or wherever her town, I don't know how big her town is, but it did not hit them at all. And she'd be like, oh, well, there's a case 4 counties away. But everything there was just normal. Like, she could get toilet paper. She, like, all this. Like, she wore a mask, and she was very cautious because she works in a hospital. She does what I do, but in a hospital. And she was very cautious, but it wasn't there. And now that it's getting colder, it's hitting. Because also all the interstate travel, everything like that, all the truckers coming in, going in, staying somewhere where it's warm, going in to eat. And it's traveling now, and it's going through.
Yeah, it's crazy. That's all it takes.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I'm not going to make it back to Australia, though, for a while, which makes me sad. I had a record going every 2 years, so like 5 years or 5 or 10 years, every 2 years.
Yeah.
I'd come out every other summer, but it's not going to happen.
When you can, you're going to have to bring Chase and V with you.
Yeah, I was going to say, I might be able to get Chase out there. V's probably going to be like, if you're driving, I'm going nowhere. But V and I, we saw a lot, and I mean, that was my 5th time, and now I think, like, Ayers Rock, or whatever it's Uluru is called now, right?
Yeah.
Politically correct term. I think that is probably one of the few things that I have not seen, but I don't necessarily have a desire.
I've never seen it.
Yeah, I want to go to Tasmania still. I haven't been there. I think V and I both, I think that's about the last spot. Chase will be like, let's go here, let's go here, let's go here. I want to go everywhere. Understandable. But I just like it. I like Australia. For me, I like the people. I love the food. Laid back kind of culture. You know, Western Australia, Perth, and whatnot is basically San Diego, just on the other side of the world, which is nice and a little bit of home.
Yeah.
Like when I got there from Africa, I was just like, I'm home. It also helped that I knew the airport like the back of my hand, but I was like, I'm home. I'm not home now. I'm being with family and stuff like that. It helped, but.
Well, God knows what you thought of Mount Gambier then when you come through.
Well, the first time, V will tell you, I was trying to pull into Domino's and I went on the wrong side because I don't know why. I was tired and he's like, wrong side of the road. I thought the Kmart was great though. Give credit to the Kmart. Loved the Kmart. We saw the big thing Like you drive up and it's like a crater full of water. Your wedding photos there were beautiful. It was not as impressive when we saw
Oh,
it. I didn't meet Schmitty. That's his name, right? That was disappointing. Anyway, so much about Schmitty, and yet I didn't meet him.
Well, I would definitely tear that up next time, I promise.
Yeah. Everyone's always like, no, you're sorry, Smithy, if you're listening, but everyone's always like, no, you don't want to meet him. And I was like, yes, I do. I love his name. I want to meet him.
Oh, well.
Yeah.
Oh, that pretty much concludes the podcast. I'll end the recording here. Thanks, everyone, for listening. If you've gotten this far, listening to the end of one of my podcasts, appreciate listening, and click the
hopefully
follow
he'll
button.
edit this down.